Welcome to the J.D. Levy and Associates Calibration Point podcast. Our podcasts are designed to bring a conversational exploration of key topics that we believe will provide value and insight to those serving in the nonprofit sector. We will highlight new developments in the field, latest research, and things we're learning from our own clients that we can share. If there are topics that you would like to see explored, please send them to us through our website at jdlevyassociates.com.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Calibration Point podcast. I want to welcome Jay Love, who is a longtime friend of mine, someone I admire, and he is also the co-founder of Bloomerang and current board chair and chief relationship officer, and was excited to be able to have Jay come on to our show and talk about a really interesting topic that he has triggered in me. And that is the idea that in digital communications, multi-channel does not mean or equal social media. Jay, I was listening to someone talk about this topic, and what really struck me is they were defining multi-channel as all these different social media channels. And knowing your professional stance, your expertise in this field, and who you are, I know that doesn't jive with your thinking about multi-channel. So I was hoping today that we could take a few minutes and you could help us better understand why multi-channel communication does not equal social media.
Well, first of all, let me say it's such a pleasure to be here, Jamie. You know, we've known each other since the 90s, and when you put all those decades together, we could almost finish each other's sentences at times. So it's going to be fun chatting about this. Yeah, my main thoughts that come to mind when we talk about something like that is that multi-channel is so many other things, especially when you think in terms of digital. And, never forget that the face-to-face and the phone calls are two of the biggest and widest and deepest and most important channels of a multi-channel strategy. And beyond those face-to-face meetings and phone calls and the voicemails that sometimes happen in place of the phone calls, I think that email is the core foundation and where so many things are done. As with that, especially as people move into these days of giving and Giving Tuesday and et cetera, where all of a sudden email blasts throughout the course of a day have become so important, but also, in my opinion, they've also become misused and in some cases almost abused at times because they're not applying good segmentation techniques and taking a look at what are the various tiers of donors that we have and who are the ones that should be solicited for this day of giving versus other times of the year where we may be talking to someone about a substantial board gift, an annual fund gift, or a major gift for a campaign.
So that's a great point. And two things that you've already highlighted that obviously resonate with me, and that is that multi-channel includes personal touch work that doesn't involve any kind of digital platform. It could be face-to-face coffee. It could also be a Zoom meeting, which I guess would be digital from that perspective. But
or it could be a digital phone where you make the phone call or you set up the face-to-face meeting. So it all comes back to roost there too.
Right, absolutely. And I think so often that just gets overlooked. And as you have said before, being able to, and you just allude to here, being able to identify constituency segmentation, and then being able to define what are the touches, like how often do we want to touch certain constituencies, and then being able to look at that from a perspective of multi-channel involves all of the, I guess, almost strategies that the organization has in how they can touch a relationship. I'm assuming that applies no matter what generation.
Oh, very much so. And, I myself personally now, Jamie, next week I turn 67. So I guess I am one of those older major donors to a lot of organizations that my wife and I support. And think about it. I have been using text messages and email now for over 2 decades. So I'm very conversant in it. I know what I'm doing with it for the most part. And it's a part of my everyday life. And in fact, it's a way of communicating with me that most of the organizations that we support have figured out that you can't do every touch point in the same manner. It's going to be one method here, one method there. Maybe it's me interacting with their website. So all these come together to create a full communication strategy over a 12-month period where you can sit down with your team and say, what is the best avenue or what is the best vehicle for each of the touch points? Because if someone is a key supporter of your organization, we want to make sure that we have a touch point, most likely at least on a monthly basis.
Right. Absolutely. And the thing that I like that you placed in there early on is that email is still a pivot point and an anchor in a multi-channel communication approach, which again, often email is not considered relevant by some. I'm not saying that it's not, because you and I know it is, but that it's not always given the primacy and relevance that it deserves in a multi-channel approach. And I hear, Jay, a lot in the field, people say, well, email works for boomers and Xers, but millennials, they don't want to receive, or they're not reading email, and I can't communicate with them by email. And I've always been kind of baffled around that, because I know that millennials, at least a lot of millennials, are just like other generations, are working somewhere that's probably connected by email. How do you respond to that?
Ask the donors. Answering your question brings up the point, because one of the touch points that's been so successful in the commercial world, and I think we can oftentimes take little cues from the commercial world, is right. I guarantee you, if you've purchased a car or truck or a major appliance or a smartphone or stayed at a hotel in the last 2 years, you've received an email asking you for your opinion in a brief survey. And right. We should be doing that with our donors too. That should be one of the 10 or 12 touch points across the core portion of a year. And we can find out very quickly, does that person know much about the mission? What part of the mission do they care about? Would they refer other people to us? And that allows us to classify them into one category or another based upon their perception of their allegiance to us at this point in time. So I think it's a very important one. And then don't forget that it's not just using the email, but using it wisely. You and I were talking earlier today, and I shared the story of a couple organizations I'm on the board of. I found out that during Giving Tuesday or a day of giving, they sent out emails to everybody in their database, everybody in their that had been a previous donor, and all of a sudden, somebody that should have been making a $50,000 or $100,000 gift made a $5,000 or $10,000 gift, and sort of said that was their gift for that year, and they did it during that day. And the organization really sort of shortchanged themselves by not being a little bit smarter with their plan of attack on something of that nature.
So, I say a lot when I teach and work with clients that every dollar that comes in has an opportunity cost attached to it. And just meaning that the dollar that came in could have been more or less, depending on what vehicle it came from. And that we want to make sure that the vehicle that we're using allows the gift to be at its highest potential. And, which is basically what I hear you saying, that if it is a multi-channel focus, we have to really be clear on what is going through each channel and how it aligns with a truly intentional touch work process with each of our constituencies.
Right. So true. And let's talk about the other portions of that. You said sometimes people, I always think about text messaging as another digital channel.
Right.
Phone apps, smartphone apps, such as auction bidding at special events.
Right.
The voicemail, when you are reaching out for somebody and can't reach them, you leave a digital voicemail message. But two of the real up and comers I wanted to make sure that your podcast listeners have a chance to know about are video thank you emails. That has become one of the hottest areas for educational fundraising and particularly university fundraising, that thank yous are sometimes sent via the video message email, and those have been very well received. And then another one that I'm seeing is the use of email to be the messenger for delivering a fully electronic annual report. All of a sudden, the annual report now has embedded videos in it, has mechanisms for people to participate within it. And it's so easy for people to share. I've received electronic annual reports, and I have forwarded them on to 10 or more people in just one click of my mouse.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, I say, okay, here's the electronic annual report. Here's the project I thought you might be interested in. It's on page 12. I'm going to forward it to you. And I remember there was one group I was working with that I thought all of my senior tennis buddies would be very interested in. So I sent it out to all 22 members of my senior tennis team.
Wow. You know, Jay, you bring up a good point, and that is multi-channel also has to allow ease of continuing that channel into other points of a constituency. And that's a really good strategy to think about. Like, okay, if I'm using this channel and it's part of my strategy for touch work, am I also helping people know how to continue that channel beyond themselves?
Right. True. And I know we started off talking about, social media. Obviously, social media is an outstanding vehicle as you're letting people know about special events, as you're bringing in brand new members of your constituency and brand new donors and all. But I think as people move up in the tiers and perhaps become larger donors for your organization, which we hope that they all do, we want to be careful there, because I just think in my personal experience, the organizations that my wife and I support, I occasionally see something on social media, but I'm not really out there looking or expecting to see anything of a personal nature come through on social media, because I would, in some cases, I may not want everybody in the world to know that I'm a major donor to this organization.
Yep. No, I think it's an excellent point. The sensitivity and to a degree, really thinking about each channel as it relates to a sensitivity factor, I think just comes into our pensiveness around that.
Well, and as you know, right now too, social media has become such a vehicle of divisiveness in our world. Absolutely. That your organization may have people of one political persuasion and the other, and you just got to be careful that we don't alienate anybody that is already very involved and very strong follower of your mission.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Jay. And just to close, the things that you've identified are, and it's one of the things I love about what you and your team have done with Bloomerang over the years, and that is creating a platform that thinks this way and that operates this way. And so appreciative just to your contributions in the field as a leader.
Well, thank you. We've tried to make it very simple for people to do proper segmenting and proper planning. And I think that's so much of it. And thank you, Jamie, too, because I know a lot of your listeners out there are Bloomerang customers and maybe thinking about it. And I can truthfully say that if they've been working with your organizations, they're pretty darn good users of our product over the long run. So,
so glad to hear that.
That is a real blessing for us.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Jay, such a blessing having you here. Really appreciate it and look forward to having you on in the future again.
Oh, thank you. Let's do it anytime.
Thanks for listening to the J.D. Levy & Associates Calibration Point podcast. If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please reach out using the contact page on our website, jdlevyassociates.com.